Hello and welcome back to Div 5G recaps. I'm sorry I didn't get week 4 out on time. I had a bit busy week, but this week we'll have a double recap of week 4 and week 5, and hopefully that will make up for a little bit. So, week 4, we had a couple of draws as always. Frankfurt Fumblers did well to draw against Undead. I mean, with Halflings, basically a draw is a win in certain ways, and a win is a super win because you don't expect really to win. Uh, Tessudines beat the Gorgoth Allgreys, so that's the Amazons beating up the Chorfs, which means obviously it didn't go super well for the Chorfs, as you'd expect their tackle to be quite good. Uh, Damn Yankees beat Tiefling Acting Up, so that's Dark Elves beat the Necromantic team, and there was a draw between the Nurgle and the Wood Elves. So let's have a look at the teams after week 4. So starting off with the Amazons, in their week 4 game, they leveled up their Strength Blitzer, a Blockline Woman, and their Mighty Blow Tackle Blitzer. However, several line women suffered. So there was a Dead Line Woman, an MNG'd Dirty Player, minus M8 Block Line Woman, and MNG'd Guard Blitzer, which you can see at the bottom there. But otherwise, the team's still in a good state. They've got plenty of guard now. Like they've got guard on all the blitzers, and they've got a line woman with guard, which is nice. They definitely need the guard to keep up with the bash teams once the team values start getting a bit higher and people start getting tackle and mighty blow. They've got 100k, so I expect they'll probably buy a couple of line women potentially. Just they don't have any loners going into the next game, and there isn't really a huge amount else to spend your money on with Amazons. Maybe you could buy a second catcher, but if you're playing sort of without doing much passing, without the thrower, then the catcher itself is not particularly valuable. Uh, yeah, let's stop there. So the Amazons still look in good shape for next week, where they will be going, well, week 5, which has already happened, where they'll be going up against the Dark Elves. They've got one tackle. They probably would have liked to have a little bit more tackle going up for the Dark Elves, but then the Dark Elves don't have a huge amount of dodge at the second. So they'll probably have a relatively good matchup. So moving on to the Chorf team, which the Amazons were playing. They have an MNG'd Bull Centaur and an MNG'd Hobgoblin, and no levels from the game, unfortunately, though they did score a touchdown. I've heard from Genocide, who has been coaching them, and said that there was. He said, "You may find yourself wondering how I lost against the Amazons." And he's saying rolling double skulls when blocking someone marking the ball, and snaking 3 vital GFIs were some key reasons, and then also sweltering heat took out 3 blockers and his blodge hobgoblin in one of the drives, which definitely will put a damper on things. Being down probably quite a lot of your good players for a drive is definitely bad for sweltering heat. And looking at their cash position, they've got 120k. They've got all the rerolls, they've got the apothecary, they've got basically all the positionals you want, because you don't really want them in a tour unless you're a crazy person. So this is probably the point where you want to either keep saving in case someone dies, or you buy Hobgoblin so you start having a bench, which is quite important, so you can do some more fouling. Next week they're coming up against, so week 5 they're going up against the Undead team, who have got a fair bit of Mighty Blow, so I would have probably thought I'll keep the cash for the moment, because even if you buy 2 Hobgoblins, you're still going to be at 11 players, so you'd have to buy 3 just to be able to get a bench. I'd probably keep my cash for the moment and wait and see if anybody dies from the Mighty Blow of the Undead team. But we'll see what they did later on in the video. So next, moving on to Frankfurt Fumblers, the halfling team. So in week 4 they were playing Undead Sheikah Ghoul Bears, and they managed to get a draw out of that, which is very good for a halfling team. Uh, Zara the Slayer, unfortunately, managed to steal the MVP and and a Kaz SPP, so not a huge amount of SPP taken by the halflings. But it sounds like Zara did manage to put in some work and help them get to the draw. And it's good to have that extra stakes stab against Undead. I don't know how much that was actually used. The team's still looking in a good position. Plenty of healthy halflings. Not much cash to spare. I'll assume they bought some halflings recently after the game. I think they've only got 10k left. But they're at 3 rerolls, got the apothecary, so unless a tree dies, basically the only thing you want to spend your money on is halflings. And you probably don't really want to go much more than 14, maybe a 15th, but you definitely want to keep a slot open for a star player because you'll get a star player most of the time. So he's got everything he needs, just needs to get some skills on the trees, which will be good, and also potentially get a couple of halflings with some decent level ups, like more block or a sure hands, or even some stats would be useful, uh, just to help them out with some bullshit. Okay, and then let's move on to the next team. So the halflings were playing against the undead, and here we have the undead team. They did get a oh no, sorry, it's a niggle on the ghoul, unfortunately. But their guard ghoul did level to get block, so that's nice. The niggle ghoul probably gets fired and rebought, seeing as they've got 210k, so they've got plenty of money to do so. And niggle with armor value 7 and no regen is a bit of a liability, even though he does have block and dodge. But again, this is kind of the decision where you don't necessarily need to make it right now. You could buy a ghoul, so you have the 4th ghoul, and then make a decision after this game whether you want to fire the niggle. Oh, sorry, after the next game, if you want to fire the niggle, just to see where they're at. So then they're playing up against the Chorf team next game, who already have quite a lot of Mighty Blow and a Claw, so could be a bit dangerous for this Undead team. You don't really want to be facing Mighty Blow Claw this early on, but they don't have a huge amount of guard. I think they've only got 1, yeah. So the Undead team should be able to use the strength advantage of the mummies and the 3 guard they've got to stop the Claw Mighty Blow from doing too much damage. So yeah, but that'll be an interesting matchup. I think because the Chorfs don't have that much guard and the Bull Centaurs out, then the Undead team have a fairly good matchup next week. Right, let's talk about Totally Acting Up next. So they did lose to get the Dark Elves, damn Yankees, in their game, but they did manage to get a white level up, so they've now got a Mighty Blow on the team, which is nice. Start boosting that Kaz up. And unfortunately, they also had Bill Paxton die. The ghoul that managed to get block has now died, but he has been replaced with Bill Paxton too. And there's still 100k in the bank. So he could, in theory, buy the ghoul again, another ghoul, but then we're starting to have quite a lot of players. Like you're already at 14 players, so you might have to fire some zombies if you wanted to do that, because it would also blow up your team value. But yeah, it's a solid looking necromantic team. They're still wanting to get some more SPP on the wolves to get like dodge or stats or mighty blow, and the guards, the whites would also like to get guard. But next week they have a game against, week 5 that is, they have a game against the Nurgle. Which should be an interesting one because the Nurgle, they don't have a huge amount of killing and they've got quite a lot of dodge. So they are very slow. So it might be that this necromantic team can give them a bit of a run around, but we'll have to see. And then so let's have a look at the Dark Elves next, seeing as they played Totally Acting Up this week. So the Dark Elves managed to win their game 1-0. In the meantime, leveling at Captain America and Monster Trucks. So that's a dodge blitzer getting a level, and the lineman got wrestle. So they're really starting to build up the base of dodge and blodge, uh, and they're looking into a really solid place. How many players have they got? Have they got the full 11? 5. Yeah, they have got 11. So they might want to spend that 70k on getting a bench. It's up to them. You might want to also consider uh, just sticking it out in case the positional dies. So if we look in their next week game, they're up against the Amazons in week 5. The Amazons have got a little bit of Mighty Blow. I think they've got 1 and plenty of guard. So I would consider just keeping on hold of the money. I don't think the 12th player is that important, and I would be a little bit worried about that Mighty Blow tackle guy killing a positional. So I might hold on to the money and wait until I've built up a little bit more before starting to buy extra players. You also got to consider you're already at 1400 team value. You don't want to build too much higher too quickly because you don't want to give up inducements like a wizard or something every game. So that's worth considering. But yeah, strong looking team. Plus Strength Blitzer and the Mighty Blow Blitzer both looking good. Obviously they want to get dodge so they can be a bit more maneuverable more easily. But yeah, that'll come in time, I am sure. So then we've got Nurgle, who played up against the Wood Elves and went 1-1. They didn't manage to level anyone, and Avota got missed next game, which is a bit of a shame. But the team is still looking good. They got that Claw, Mighty Blow, Pestigore is sort of developing as their killer. The Warriors have got some levels, and that plus strength Beast of Nurgle is obviously very good. Just looking at the SPP side of things here. So in their game, yeah, they only got the 1 touchdown and a MVP. But the touchdown did go on the Nurgle Warrior, so he's only a touchdown away from leveling up. And the MVP went on Asoma Linbarden as well. So getting plenty of Nurgle Warrior SPP, which is what you like to see. You want to get your Nurgle Warriors developed quite quickly, just so they can be as annoying as possible. So they're looking in a good position. Next week they're up against Totally Acting Up the Necromantic, which, as I said a bit earlier, it's probably going to be a little bit tough, but they've got the Mighty Blow Claw, so they can try and hope for some removals and for things to not regen. But it's going to be hard for their Nurgle Warriors not to get just bogged down by the zombies and then have their Pestigore sort of teamed up on by the Wights and the Werewolves. But we will see how they do shortly when we move on to week 5. Before that, we've just got to move on, have a quick look at the Wood Elves, who are playing against the Nurgle team, as I just said. So the plus strength War Dancer levels and managed to get tackle. They only needed a pass level, and so they got that fairly easily. Also, dodge lineman levels got block. I think that's okay because you want to have some block to do your hits on the line. I would have considered going wrestle as well, but I think it's fine to have a couple of block ones just to start off so that you can start, because when you're doing your alignment LOS hits, you don't really want to be wrestling too much unless the other opponent's got block. So it's good to have a couple of blocks that you can have on the line, and you're obviously not going to want to have the War Dancers doing all the LOS hits, because then who are you blitzing with? And it also probably leaves them a bit open. So I think having at least one block just to do some hits on the line is good. And then you can think about maybe going wrestle or maybe 1 or 2 more block later on. Teams, they've got 110k in the bank. I'm not sure if they're saving up for the Tree Man. I think I probably would, just because having the Tree Man really helps to stop your linemen dying, seeing as they have to take less hits. That being said, they do have 3 loners at the moment, so they will be taking most of the LOS hits, but once you lose one of them, then you start after putting people that you actually care a little bit about on the line. And if you've got a tree on the line, then that just makes it so that there's one less person. Obviously, do care a little bit about the tree, but with armor value 10, he's pretty safe against non-claw teams. And the Wood Elves are playing the Halflings next week, so that should be a relatively safe game for them. Uh, because especially with the tackle, getting that tackle is nice. He only needs 1 assist to 3 dice some Halflings, so potentially that War Dance could get a lot of SPP in the next game. But yeah, they should be doing okay against Halflings. Alright, and with that, let's move on to Week 5. So these are the Week 5 matchups. I've put them up at the moment just without the scores up, because obviously these games have been completed now. But I'm just putting them up so we can have a look at the matchups, because I thought it would be good to have a talk about who won and how they did when we're talking through the teams as well. So let's start off with the damn Yankees and their matchup against the Testy Deans. So I'm going to try something a little bit new in this week's matchup. I'm going to start using Rebel to show the position of the teams. So Testy Deans versus the damn Yankees. So Amazon's won 2-1 against Trunkhead. Amazon's got 60k winnings. Man, to those of you who haven't used Rebel.net before, like I have, really, to look at match things, this is actually quite useful. Being able to see the winnings and things like that, it's very nice. So we can see the damn Yankees. They did manage to. They suffered quite a lot of KOs, but they dealt out the Kaz. So they suffered 5 KOs, but inflicted 2 KOs and 2 Kaz, whereas the Amazons didn't manage to inflict any Kaz on the Amazons. The Amazons still managed to come out ahead, though. So let's have a look. So we got a completion from Dark Elf lineman, Kaz on the lineman. Witch Elf got a touchdown. Captain America got MVP, which is very nice. And Uncle Sam got a completion as well. And the Mice Player Blitzer, unsurprisingly, got a Kaz. Let me just check. I'm not sure if that that report shows, like, the SPP here shows what the SPP is at the end of the game or at the start of the game. It looks like it is at the end of the game, because if it was at the start of the game and this guy got an MVP, he would have leveled up, but he didn't. So no level ups, but a nice SPP spread. Getting some SPP on these blitzers. You probably would have preferred to have a little bit more SPP on the strength and mighty blow ones, just so they can get dodge, as that is all important, but still pretty good SPP. If we have a look at the Amazons, so they did have 3 loners, and it looks like they induced a DP loner line woman. One of those loners died, and unfortunately, one of the line women that got a touchdown also died. So for the Testy Deans, they got a touchdown on Choladina McCordy. So she's doing well, and Calagula Borneonuensis got MVP as well. So no levels again, but some okay SPP. Shame about that linewoman dying. Does mean you're going to have even more loners, so there's potentially going to have to buy even more. But they did get 60k, and Amazon linewomen are only 50k, so they can buy they have enough money to buy a replacement linewoman, and probably have some money to take them up to maybe 11 players. So that was Amazons versus Dark Elves, and the Amazons took that. And let's move on to the next match. So next we're going to have a look at the Wood Elves versus Halfling matchup. So unsurprisingly, Wood Elves managed to take advantage of the fact that they've got block and dodge and are much faster than Halflings to take 0-4-2. Yeah, it's not surprising that Wood Elves have to get pretty unlucky or seriously outplayed to lose against Halflings or even draw. Just because they're so much faster and Just you can't get tied up on trees really because you just dodge away. The halflings are easy to blitz with your war dancers, and yeah, it's just not a good time for halflings. So we can see they both had 2 CAS apiece that they inflicted, but the halflings did take an extra 3, probably from dodges and GFIs that failed. Plus strength war dancer got the MVP, but didn't seem to do much else. Got a completion on alignment, CAS on alignment, another CAS on alignment, and the touchdown came on. Oh, sorry. Right. Okay. So that's saying there's three touchdowns on that catcher. So they put in a lot of the work, and they have leveled up. Unfortunately, they have not taken the level yet, so we don't know what they've rolled. But I think it's probably going to be block or wrestle, assuming it's a normal. But we don't know whether it was or not. If it's not, if it's a double, then it's probably something like guard. If it's a stat, then you probably just take whatever stat you get. So yeah, Woodell's now looking good. They've got 190k in the bank after this, so they could decide to buy a tree, which I think is probably wise. Just as I was talking about earlier, so they don't have to take deaths and badly hurts on linemen. Though luckily in this match, they both fell on loners, so that's not really a big problem. Looking at the halflings, Deep Rip Weak Wish got a CAS and leveled himself up. He took Break Tackle, which is maybe not the first choice I think most people would go for on a tree. I think most people go for Guard or Grab as the first choice, but Break Tackle does open up some options, especially if you don't like getting marked up and them just having to sit there. It does let you reposition a bit, so it is good on a halfling tree, and also the fact that halfling trees don't have loner means you can re-roll it if it rolls a 1. So like on a wood elf tree, you probably wouldn't ever take Break Tackle unless you've already got guards and grab and you haven't rolled anything else interesting. Then maybe you take Break Tackle. But on a halfling tree man, it does make a bit more sense to take earlier on because you do need them to be a bit more movable, seeing as the rest of your team is quite slow. You see Puggy Bacon Breath got induced, but didn't seem to do very much. Maybe just stood around and took some hits. Bungo Peason got the MVP. Nothing else particularly interesting happened apart from the Diving Catch halfling got a MNG, and so did another halfling, and the rest were badly hurt, so nothing going on there. The Block halfling also got a touchdown, which is nice, so he's very close to leveling. If he does level, it's interesting what they might take. Probably Sidestep or Diving Tackle or something, unless he gets another double. If he gets another double, then that's happy days, and he can get Sure Hands and be a very successful ball carrier. But yeah, so halflings, as expected, not doing well against against war dancers, especially plus strength war dancers. But yeah, they did well to get 2 touchdowns, and they got plenty of SPP. Leveling up a tree is nice, so I don't think they can be too unhappy about that game. And obviously the Wood Elves are very happy with getting 4 touchdowns and managing to level up the catcher. Okay, so let's move on to the next game. Okay, so the next game we're going to have a look at is the Shikar Ghoulbears versus the Golgoth All Greys. So the Golgoth All Greys did go in having only 1 Bull Centaur, which is obviously a bit of a disadvantage. And the Shikar Ghoulbears, I thought, had enough guards to make things work, especially as there's only 1 guard on the Chorfs. And it looks like that is what happened. Quite a heavy CAS game on each side. Chorfs inflicted 5, Undead inflicted 4. So pretty CAS heavy. Zombie got movement busted, but that's all that really important happened in terms of injury-wise for the Undead team. Mighty Blow White got a couple of CAS and leveled himself up, and he has taken MA, plus MA, which is nice. So it depends if it was a doubles or not. If it was a doubles, you might consider dodge instead of plus MA. But otherwise, I think plus MA is pretty nice. It is seeing as you don't have any, like, or you have to kind of rely on your ghouls as your fast players. You're not like a werewolf team, sorry, a necromantic team, where you can get movement 8 werewolves who can run around. So I do like plus movement on a white slightly more on undead than I would on a necromantic team, just for those reasons. So you can have a more reactive mighty blow tackle player. It does mean he's slowing down the guard potentially, but the other white could get up guard or piling on when he levels up, and he has already got 3 guard on the team, which isn't too bad. As long as they keep alive, then they should be okay. They did buy a 3rd ghoul. I don't know if they've fired the niggled ghoul yet. But yeah, so they've got their 3rd ghoul, and I think it's this one called Ringbeard who got a touchdown. So now both these ghouls are 1 touchdown away from leveling up, which is pretty good. And the mummies are starting to get quite close to leveling up as well. An MVP or maybe a couple of Kaz for Valen would level them up, which is looking good. If we look at the Dwarf team, they did get plenty of Kaz on their blockers, which is not very nice for them. Like, this blocker is only 1 Kaz away from leveling up. This one's only 1 Kaz away from leveling up. The Mighty Blow Claw is getting slowly closer to piling on. And this one is a couple of Kaz away, and maybe even like a touchdown away. Slightly disheartening that Thog Bladetooth nicks the MVP while also getting Agibust. But otherwise, probably an okay game for them. Like, obviously, they prefer to have won and had their 2nd bull and maybe get some SVP on that guy or this one. But you can't really complain with the Cas SPP on these blockers, and the team is developing nicely. So with the other Bull Centaur coming back for the next game, they're probably going to be in a much better position. They probably still do need to get a little bit more guard. That was the downside of taking all these Mighty Blow first. Whoops. Is that teams like Undead really can just outmuscle you, especially because they've got more guard as well. So that is a bit unfortunate. But let's move on to the last game. So the last game is FC Armenstein versus Totally Acting Up. Nurgle versus Necromantic. They both managed to cause 3 Kaz apiece, but Hamasep got out on top with a 2-1 win against the Necromantic. Let's have a look at the players. So Werewolf got badly hurt, but he's still okay. Zombie died, but you're probably not too worried about that. Flesh Golem MVP is very nice. He puts him one Kaz away from leveling up, which will be very good. So you can have a 2nd guard, potentially. Might Play White did a Kaz, getting a bit closer. And the Werewolf got a Kaz and a touchdown. So he's now only a touchdown away from getting a 2nd level, which would be great. You probably, if he doesn't roll anything interesting like a Mighty Blow or a stat, he'd probably take Dodge, I'd imagine, seeing as you've already got Tackle on one of the Werewolves. You probably want to take Dodge first on him before Tackle, just because you've already got one. But we'll see. Roguebart might decide differently. And then looking at the Nurgle team, Pestigore did cause 1 Kaz, but also got himself badly hurt. MVP on Nurgle Warrior is always great, and he got a Kaz 2, and he's only a touchdown away from leveling up. Obviously, movement 4 and agility 2 makes it quite hard to do touchdowns, but we do see that Matumbo, the Nurgle Warrior, did manage a touchdown as well. And we also got a Kaz on a Nurgle Warrior. So overall, he's had a very good time. And we're now going to watch a little clip from Hamasep's stream to see how on earth Matumbo managed to get that touchdown.
So I think we will be dodging out over there. There we go, dodgy Nurgle. Great. Let's follow up. Actually, okay, that should be. If he makes that pickup, let's go. Hey! Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4. We need 1G5. This is ridiculous. Elf Nurgle bullshit.
Well, there you have it. Elf Nurgle bullshit indeed. And Matumbo manages to level up and takes block as a result of that. Um, and Hummus up there proving me wrong in that dodge first on Nurgle Norris sometimes works out. Obviously, doesn't always work out. Block is a more reliable skill, but for plays like that, dodge first on Nurgle Warrior, it must be very satisfying to see that it works sometimes. And there we have it. So let's have a look at the leaderboard. We can see that there are a couple of games which have been played already, but I don't think they affected the leaderboard standings too much. So Amazon still walking ahead with undefeated record. Well, and not even undrawed record as well. 5-0-0. Doing very well for themselves. Wood Elves coming in next. Unsurprisingly, Wood Elves managing to win most of their games. They're a great team for winning until they start dying. But fortunately for Wally, they haven't started dying quite yet. So he's still able to pull off some elf bullshit. Then we have Humsep Snurgle, who, as we just saw, can pull off some some elf Nurgle bullshit as well. And then moving down, we've got Dark Elves with Trunkhead, Soglug's Undead, Gunnerside's Chorfs, Robots Necromantic, and then Drunken's Halflings. That about wraps it up for this week. Sorry there weren't that many there was only the one clip, but it turns out I recorded this far too late and I am no longer able to access the replays because all the games were played over a week ago. To counteract that, I'm going to start looking at some of the replays for this week now, for the two games that have already been played, so hopefully we can get some nice clips from them. And as always, if something interesting happens, or there's a clip that you want me to have a look at, do send them over to me, and I'll try and put them into next week's recap. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.